Welcome to the Matt Waller Podcast, where we look at success at the intersection of technology, logistics, supply chain, retail, and CPG, also known as the retail value chain. I want to clarify that this podcast is distinct from my responsibilities as a professor in the Sam M. Walton College of Business. Nonetheless, it aligns with my aspiration to provide practical insights to professionals and business by showcasing companies and people that can enhance your ability to manage, lead, and strategize and market effectively in the retail value chain. Before we dive into today's exciting episode, I'd like to thank our sponsor, New Road Capital Partners. New Road invests in proven technologies, services, and products that serve unmet needs in the marketplace. They look for companies in supply chain and logistics, as well as consumer-oriented companies. For more information, go to newroadcp.com. I would also like to disclose that I am a strategic advisor to New Road. I'd also like to recognize podcastvideos.com for the services they provide for these podcasts. I'm very pleased with their services. And now, without further ado, let's get into the exciting episode. I am so excited about the podcast interview today. We are really looking at marketing today more than anything, and in particular, retail media networks. And I'm interviewing John Sheehy, and he has an incredible experience. He was the global brand president for Starcom Worldwide and a member of the Publicis Media Group leadership team. He led the global media agency focused on the power of human experience fueled by the convergence of media, technology, client partnerships, and product excellence. But he also had 2 decades of experience with Leo Burnett Company, where he was on the U.S. and global executive boards. So he's got decades of experience in retail. He's still very active. He's involved in investing and being on boards of companies. One of the companies he's on the board of is called Tracer. You'll hear about that. He's currently an operating partner at New Road Capital Partners. But today you're going to hear, I actually present John with data that he had not seen before and ask him to respond to it. And he was gracious and did that, and really did a great job of responding to it. And I think you'll find the data interesting. You'll find his responses interesting. We also just talk about how marketing has changed. The principles haven't changed, but the alternative courses and paths you can take have grown. It's a lot more complex. But you're going to, regarding retail media networks, he does a great job of talking about, how brands are really trying to get closer to the customer, understand the customer more through these retail media networks. But retailers have the data, and there's so much data out there that has to be brought together, harmonized, and analyzed to be able to understand what is the value of an extra dollar I spend on some retail media network versus something else. And in-store marketing or whatever the case may be. But he does a great job of explaining the need to do this and really what are retailers looking for, what are brands looking for, what are agencies looking for. I come away from this discussion really understanding it better than I did before I did the interview. We talk about specific retailers and their levels of engagement in retail media networks. We talk about a company that John is on the board of directors for called Tracer. He's on the board. They have a really interesting technology. They've invested a lot in this technology. But basically, there's marketing data comes from so many different sources. This company has technology to bring it together, to create reports, and to analyze it for better decision making. So he chose to be on that board because of this new technology and capability. And again, as I mentioned, we talk about the future of marketing, but it really is an interesting discussion. If you're involved in marketing, especially in consumer products, or maybe you're with an agency or a retailer, you definitely should understand this. I actually think, a lot of the companies we've interviewed on this podcast have more to do with supply chain management, what I call the retail value chain. But really, everything's converging. If you're in supply chain management, you really should be very familiar with this because it's going to affect demand and where demand comes from, et cetera, et cetera. But I think you'll really enjoy this. It was quite a pleasure to visit with John. John, it's so great to have you on the Matt Waller podcast today. Thank you for joining me.
Matt, I'm very excited. Thank you.
John, you have a lot of experience in marketing, as I talked about in the introduction a few seconds ago. But one new phenomena that's really popped up in recent years is retail media networks. And it's surprising how many people still don't know what retail media networks are. So would you mind just giving a brief overview of what that means?
Sure. I think in order to get the full perspective of retail media, probably the intersection of three things: brands and what they're looking for, retailers and what they're trying to accomplish, and then importantly in the mix, where agencies are, because a lot of the money flows through, as you know, through the agency, and what they're trying to do is match audience and investment and return on that investment. So I'll start with the brands. What are brands looking for? Well, no surprise, they're looking to get as close as they can to their customer. And over the last, as media has shifted from traditional to digital, with things going digital, it can be more addressable, and then you have the ability to do that at great speed with programmatic. So as all media becomes digital, what the brands want to do is get as close as they can to that transaction and really show how the dollars are working, not just on a reach and frequency, but on a business outcome. And what retailers have is they have that data, the transaction data, they understand their customers, and over the last 5 to 7 years, they've been able to map out what happens to their audience, how they're shopping, what their behaviors are, and therefore they've accumulated very rich and very privacy compliant data. And so what the retailers are offering the brands, in theory, is access to their most valued customers. And because they understand their habits and behaviors, they're offering up brands in the right time, at the right moment, potentially with the right message. And that all sounds great. The challenge is retailers becoming more of a media platform. And by that, you take the complexities of having to build audiences, reach them in the right channels, be able to measure how all that's working. And retailers are now building that capability. So the promise, get closer to the customer for the brands. Retailers are owners of those customers, and therefore there should be a really good match. And what's happening is with Amazon, they do so much of their business direct that they mastered that early on. Walmart has made big investments in the area. They're catching up and have a very good model. Roundel, you think of all their other retailers. And what they're trying to do is offer up proximity to that consumer. Traditionally, they've done that through in-store. You talk about allowances, you talk about shelf space, but now they're able to go to different channels, whether it's digital on display, whether it's digital out of home, whether it's some of their in-store capabilities through audio. You see a lot of the cooler screens. And so what they're doing is they're selling that space to the brands with the promise that, hey, we can connect with the right audiences in real time. From an agency perspective, they are trying to plan not just the retail dollars, but the overall investment back to the brand across all these fragmented channels, which now include retail media. And so the reason that people are still trying to figure out where this is going to end up is because it's taken a while for retailers to really develop this true capability, the ability to build audiences, reach them, then measure and report back to the brands the performance of this. And, not surprisingly, there's a trade-off in terms of what's that return for every dollar you spend, and everyone's trying to measure that with greater precision. At the same time, I think the other force is that the brands themselves are already having to pay significant dollars in order to reach that customer. And these are incremental dollars. So you have your traditional, and now you have your digital dollars. And so the question that the brands have to the retailers is, show me that this is incremental. Show me that this is providing a greater return, and do that in the context of not just my retail dollars that I'm spending at your store, but my overall marketing budget. And so, those are the triangulated challenges of really proving out the retail media and its efficacy on behalf of brands. And, we've seen the top 5 retailers do this. If you want to just talk grocery retail, Albertsons, Kroger, Roundel, Walmart, obviously Amazon. And now we see the middle half of that looking to explore that. And if you really want to stretch the conversation, you can think of retail media for anyone that has and is able to capture their data, offering up these audiences back to brands, back to advertisers in order to capture this. And I think, Matt, if I could go one step further, I think what's exciting about this is that it really reflects how marketing is changing. We've seen this, again, if you go back to all things digital, all things addressable, then you really bring in, the conversation about machines and AI. But at the heart of this, what you're able to do, if you're a marketer these days, is really go from audience and insights with greater granularity and certainty through identity and, even in the absence of cookies. You're able to then activate and orchestrate across all these channels. And then, the promise is you're able to measure and optimize against business results, not just things like reach and frequency or engagement. And, that is the promise of the future of marketing, and technology is enabling to do that, but it's at the same time very challenging in order to get all these pieces and simplify it down into one cohesive ecosystem. But it's starting with what's happening with data and the ability to really understand audiences, deliver up the right message at the right time, and even to be able to optimize that. What used to take quarterly reporting and looking back, now you're able to look at things in more real time. And again, the promise is more productivity of all those dollars that are being invested.
So, John, I'm wondering, you mentioned Amazon being the leader in this. How are major retailers like Walmart, Target, et cetera, using their own retail media networks and shopper data to compete with Amazon on this? And do they have any unique advantages since they're primarily physical?
It's a great question, Matt. I think if you were to ask that 3 years ago with COVID, you probably would have said that Amazon had the big advantage because everything was being shipped door to door and continues to be that way. But the reality is that consumers are shopping both in traditional and digital, and that footprint, both in the digital world and the traditional world, is very important. So Walmart or Roundel or any other retailer that has so many locations, they have to still drive that in-store traffic, which is incredibly important for them, shopper size, profitability. At the same time, they have to become a digital company and do that in the digital world. And I think if you look forward, I would say that the people that are able to get that right balance and really understand their audiences and why they shop and why they're loyal to those stores or that digital channel are going to be the winner. So I don't think one's better than the other. I think they've all been dealt the deck of cards, and they're dealing with that as best they can. And some of them are doing it faster and better than others, and some are struggling because it's one thing to have your business primarily in traditional and become a digital player. Likewise, it's tough to be a digital player and then get that physical footprint. So it's going to play out. And I think what you'll see is people being very agile and very disciplined with their investments, especially in the current economy. And so, there's a lot more questions being asked about the return on all these investments and how it's paying off.
So retailers really need to work on delivering value through their retail media network and being able to measure it and demonstrate that value.
If they can't show the incrementality of $1 invested in Walmart versus $1 invested, let's say, in Google or anywhere else where they could put that dollar, the notion of retail media starts to dissipate quickly. And by incrementality, that's I think, a critical word in what's happening today with the retail media. Brands are saying, look, we're investing a lot of dollars here. How is this helping me achieve incremental results than what I could get otherwise through whether it's national media or any of the other ways that they look to engage that consumer? And again, I think what you're seeing now are retailers putting that ecosystem together, which they're able to better answer that question week on week. It's going that quickly.
So from your perspective, how will the rise of retail media networks impact the future of marketing in general?
Well, I think, first of all, it's an incremental channel that wasn't there 5-7 years ago. So, we're going through the learning curve of validating just how important it is. And a lot of dollars, if you look at marketers' budgets, are going and testing the waters and making significant investments in this space. Again, if it pays off to show the incrementality, that channel will continue to grow and flourish. And you'll see that not just with retailers, but again, think of Marriott as someone who owns that consumer and willing to leverage that to sell back into local entertainment companies that want to buy the Marriott consumer, rental agencies that want to buy that consumer. So the broader notion of retail media, if you think about just audiences and people that have that transactional data, this will continue to expand. But right now, given how tight dollars are, marketing budgets, they have to show the efficacy in very clear terms.
Okay, great. Let's shift gears here a little bit to Tracer. Would you mind just explaining what Tracer is? This is a company.
To explain Tracer, one of the biggest challenges that agencies or clients have is they have increasing amounts of fragmented data coming in to their pipes. Could be their own data. It could be data that's provided by agencies or other vendors. Think about social channels, what's coming through Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, what comes through search, whether it's Google or Bing, ChatGPT. So what happens is you have to be able to ingest that data so that it can all flow through to the analytics and the reporting. And you have to do that with accuracy. And you have to do that in a very automated way because there's still a lot of antiquated systems and people doing that manual labor, trying to cross-tab. Give you an example. I have a $10 investment, $2 through Facebook, $2 through TikTok, $2 through Google. You get it. And then I want to understand and attribute how that's paying off in terms of consumer engagement and business outcomes. If I can't harness that data, I can't show the efficacy of those dollars. I can't do the reporting. I can't do the advanced analytics. And I can't do that in any kind of real time where it's going to add value. What Tracer does is they've mastered the simple art of ingesting that data in a very seamless, clean way with accuracy and agility. And that's what the clients are paying for. Whether you're an agency who doesn't have the manpower to do that or the technology, they haven't invested that much. You're a client that says, look, I want all these pipes. I don't want to have to import from one agency to the next, one supplier to the next. And that's what Tracer's been able to do. And it's a very complex challenge. And what they've been able to do over the years is invest in that in a very specific way to master the complexity. So that can go across markets. It can go across different segments, consumer brands. So you think a big enterprise client like Sanofi, who has a consumer division, a division across 5 different markets. You see how that complexity has to be harnessed, and that's what Tracer does.
Yeah, I remember just in Northwest Arkansas for years, this goes back decades, not long after Walmart started sharing what they called retail link data. Now they're sharing Luminate. But the retail link data, gave lots of information about, point of sale data by store by day, et cetera, inventory levels and all kinds of information. But it had to be harmonized a lot of times with the company's own data, let alone other sources of marketing data. So even just trying to harmonize 2 different sources is quite difficult. So I can imagine, based on the experience I've had in that being able to harmonize lots of marketing data from many different sources would be extremely valuable.
Yeah, absolutely right, Matt. I used to, when I was running Global Starcom, we had a lot of global clients such as Samsung, you name a lot of the clients. And as the head of that agency, I can't tell you how many times I got a call that says, house on fire, we cannot get our data in any kind of system structured way. Therefore, I can't report back to how the markets are doing. I have a big meeting. I have to go to my bosses and show how these dollars are being spent. And you guys aren't able to aggregate those up in real time and with real accuracy. And that's the challenge. That's the problem that Tracer solved, is making that data very consistent and very accurate and very usable in real time. And so it's in this economy, it's not only playing on the one side of the coin, which is improved performance, but on the other side of the coin, which is greater efficiencies in doing it. So taking out spreadsheets, manual labor, expensive FTEs that are spending their time doing this as opposed to the advanced analytics.
So, John, of course, you're on Tracer's board of directors. And obviously, you think highly of the problem they're solving, but what made you particularly interested in joining their board?
You know what? I'm operating partner with New Road Capital Partners based in Northwest Arkansas. And while I was at Publicis, I had the opportunity to work with Jeremy Wilson, one of the co-founders, as a board member of an influencer company. And what I realized there was the operating partner model was something that I was very used to at the agency side, which is an extension of a client's business, helping them put together the right capabilities to solve their growth challenges. And so when we took the investment in Tracer, the belief is that we always want to be very active in helping them be successful. And so that's why I chose to be on their board, because I understand the problem deeply and understand the clients and the agencies that struggle with it. And so I thought I'd be in the best position to help them grow if I was more actively involved. And so it's been a big reward because as a guy who used to be in the agency business for a long, long time, I feel like I'm still contributing on a week in and week out basis in them solve their problems.
Why do you think top brands and agencies are adopting Tracer's platform? I mean, I understand what they do by harmonizing and bringing together lots of different sources, but what makes it stand out above the competition?
First off, if you think about their focus and the amount of dollars they've invested over the last 8 years in their product, they designated this out of a very strong media company, VaynerMedia, where they developed the proof of concept. And so what makes them unique is because they're singularly focused on that data ingestion. They're not selling them the back-end analytics. They're making that so that they can use those to do their advanced analytics. very few companies in this space are that focused on solving this critical problem. And so that's why Tracer is uniquely positioned and has been expanding their business with big enterprise clients because they've solved this and mastered this. And once you get into a conversation with the clients or agencies, they're willing to admit that this is a big challenge for them, or they struggle with this. And the selling proposition is both, again, we can improve your productivity. We can also save you on the cost side of this because it's a machine-driven, AI-driven platform that allows them to take out a lot of man hours and do this and do it very clearly, very accurately, and in a very agile way. I think that's when clients have to show their investments and get to business outcomes. It's very critical that they get this the digestion done, the plumbing done correctly.
John, I've got some data I just wanted to share with you. It comes from Integral Ad Science, IAS, and there was an article, and it's called Driving ROI in Retail Media Networks. It was August 8th, 2023, so it's new data. And they looked at the past 12 months, and what they were looking at was types of retail media ads that U.S. digital shoppers pay attention to versus purchase from. And there's a strong correlation to what they pay attention to, what they purchase from, stronger than what I would have even expected. But number one is that 55 or 51% of retail media ads that shoppers pay attention to are ads for products that are on sale. So that's number one. Number two are best-selling items in the product category that you're browsing. And that's at 44%. Number three is ads suggesting products that you might also like. That's at 41%. So it's really close. I haven't seen the raw data, but I would suspect that there is a statistically significant difference between the first one and the second and third, but not between the second and third, but I don't know for sure. They're so close. And then the fourth one down is ads suggesting products that customers also viewed. And then the last one, only at 14%, is ads for products that are unrelated to the products you're browsing. Does any of that surprise you?
You know what? I think if you look at the top, percent on deal, in this environment, that doesn't surprise. We've seen value come back into the conversation,
right?
And certainly, brands have to lead with that, and it's kind of a proven attention getter. The interesting part is really that middle piece, which reflects a bit about what we've always known, which is where influencers or where word of mouth seems to resonate. And so the retailer ads that are able to, again, half the ROI is the media placement, and more than that is the messaging, the relevancy of that messaging. I think relevancy, when you get it endorsed by someone especially if you're in the purchase or aware of that or interested in that, the relevancy goes up. And so I think retailers are getting much better in general, and marketers are getting much better in trying to serve up that more relevant message. And what you're seeing is a shift in how marketers are starting to really become, out of necessity, much more agile in the way that they serve up, learn, and re-serve up these messages. And so it's not by accident that they're able to kind of dial these things in. What's interesting to me is that, with all the fragmentation that goes on, the one area that I think they're still playing catch up, even though we have all this technology, is the ability to message in a much more agile way. to take advantage of all the formats, all the channels, and to really be able to, in more real time, Matt, get at the heart of what's going to drive that business outcome. It used to be reach and frequency. We reached them. We had 1 ad, 2 ads, 3 ads against a very broad audience. Now you're able to segment those audiences. You're able to message with greater accuracy and relevance, and you're able to measure, optimize in more real time. And so the deal doesn't surprise me. And the relevancy, it should be that way. You should be, consumers, they're so bombarded with messaging. If you can't hit that relevance dial, then you're going to drop off, as you can see, in 14%. If it's unrelated, you just, you're really out there casting away at the in the dark. So
Yeah.
And there's so much upside in terms of where this is going. I think we're in the early phases of just trying to master some of the technology that's available, whether it's dynamic content, whether it's advanced analytics. You look at the advance of what's going on with streaming and the connected television space, that all promises that addressability nature of where engagement is going. So never going to be a more exciting time to be in marketing, even in this tough economic climate. You're going to have to prove that you can engage and prove that you can do it at a very effective cost.
Yeah, marketing, what a great time to be in marketing. And I want to ask you a couple more questions about this article. But I also want to make sure we cover just how exciting marketing is right now, and marketing tech in general I'd like to talk to you about. But there was an article in Insider Intelligence in a section they call E-Marketer, and it's titled 5 Charts on the Current and Future State of Retail Media. It was written by Ariel Feger, September 25th, 2023, so this is recent. And I mentioned the first chart, but they had another chart in there called In-Store Media Presents a Giant Opportunity. So it looks at in-store versus digital U.S. monthly audience reach. And it's interesting. So it's basically got in-store versus digital. And this particular chart shows, if you look at, and these numbers are in millions of unique visitors, but if you look at Walmart for their in-store, of course, it's just crazy high. It's 212 million. And Target's number 2 at 119 million. So, but then if you look at, that's in-store audience reach. If you look at digital U.S. monthly audience reach, then Walmart's at 140 million and Target's at 78 million. But, when you look at, some of these, like Walgreens, for example, Walgreens, let me back up a second. So if you look at Walmart or Target, there's less reach digitally than there is in store. But the difference is not dramatic. I mean, it's what you might expect. Walgreens, it goes from 73 million to 35 million, so it's less than half. Whereas you look at Home Depot, it's about 70 million. It's 68 million reach in store versus 55 or 56 million digitally. So, my point is, when I look at these top ones, Home Depot is really close digitally to their in-store compared to Walgreens, which is very in-store, and then Walmart and Target are somewhere in between that range from a percentage perspective. What do you make of that?
That's a good question, Matt. I should ask, what do you make of that?
Well, I would have to think, and I know that was a very hard question. I don't know the answer for sure, but when I look at this, it makes me think that Home Depot's doing a really good job digitally. They don't have the reach of Walmart. Walmart's just incredible.
Right.
If you look at the digital reach of Walmart, it's almost 3 times that of Home Depot. And, but I really haven't noticed, I haven't paid attention enough to see what is, I've used Home Depot's website a few times. I was looking for, actually we're building a new house, and there was something specific I was looking for, and I really liked it. I liked how they, laid things out and made it easy to save things and compare things and those kind of tasks. But yeah, these numbers surprised me a little bit. Again, if you look at some of these, like Best Buy's in-store monthly audience is 27.7, so about 28 million. Their digital reach is 55 million. So they're reaching more digitally, Best Buy is, than they are in the store. That surprised me.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to read that article to understand the metrics that they're looking at. The scale of those doesn't surprise me. The involvement on some of those retailers is interesting. So Home Depot, probably driven a lot by search. And they do a lot to, they go through a lot of categories that are more, I guess, high involvement. They have a lot of seasonality to them as well. So people might be searching that category, which would drive up some of the digital footprint that they have. Same thing with Best Buy. Less frequently you're going to go to Best Buy, but when you're in there for a TV or for something, a speaker or what they might be, you're going to be searching and getting recommendations. Whereas I think some of the retailers, you're pretty savvy on what their offering is, especially in the physical store, because you're shopping it more often.
That makes sense.
I'd have to look at the numbers. Yeah.
You may have really hit on it there. I hadn't thought of that. One thing that really differentiates those retailers is the frequency with which you would shop there.
Yeah. And I think just the overall scale, and maybe it's even, I'm always interested in the rural versus non-rural. Walgreens is a really interesting one because they're in more urban areas. You find Walgreens on every corner or every block. So again, I'd have to look into to really understand the why behind that.
Sure.
The interesting part that, and this is why it goes back to the brands. If you're P&G or you're Coca-Cola, you're really looking at that retailer data saying, look, if you have Walmart, for example, 110 million people that are Walmart shoppers, you not only know what they're buying on your products, but complementary products. You're also able to look at if you want a conquest, if you want to put in a seasonal. And so that's why it's so critical that retailers show the brands that aside from just the dollars that you put in on the shelf allowances and everything else that they already invest in, that there's incrementality, that a dollar spent with a Walmart audience is going to be incremental and as valuable than you could get by putting it out there through any of the other digital channels. And the agencies have to be able to plan, not just across all the traditional or digital channels, but now they have to plan for how do I start to shift dollars towards these retailers? What's the right balance? And again, how do we measure that so that we can go back and make good choices on behalf of the clients? So again, that the ability to analyze this and have some measurement that people believe in, and it can compare across different channels. Still clients ask, I'm spending all this money, wonder where I'm getting the greatest return. Tell me why.
So I guess that's another reason why a company like Tracer is so valuable today, because everyone wants to measure and figure out what is the ROI on, what's the optimal portfolio of my investments in marketing. And if you don't have the data and you can't measure it, you have no chance of calculating that.
Yeah. And if you can't get the reporting in an agile way, if it's taking you a week to draw up a report and go back to the brand and say, hey, look, we think these were your sales, a week, a month, that's a real delay in a world that's moving very quickly. So that ingestion of the data not only allows you to analyze it, but also report on it in a very accurate way. And you can democratize that data across the organization, whether it's across markets or whether it's across divisions or whether it's in a department. And, it's an advantage if you can do that and do it well. And if you can do it in a cost-effective way, which the benefits of Tracer, that's where they've found their sweet spot. So
back to these charts, there's a couple others I'd like to get your inputs on. And this one's it's an opinion. And your opinion, given your experience, would be very valuable. And that is, again, it's from this Insider Intelligence eMarketer, but it's about shoppable content, maybe the next big thing in retail media. So basically, they're saying retail media that ad agency professionals worldwide think will be the next frontier. So what do they think is the next frontier from retail media? And so the number one thing that's listed there is shoppable video content. And, I know Walmart has partnered recently with a company that has a video game, and the video game is called House Flip, Home Flip, maybe, I can't remember, something like that. And basically, they're partnering with them so that, and I guess it's a virtual reality kind of experience. I'm not a gamer. I don't play video games. I kind of wish I did, because I don't know much about it. But at any rate, you can go in and, I believe, look at how various home furnishings might look, and then you can make purchase decisions that way. Have you heard of this?
I've seen that model. A lot of that's been around, especially if you look at markets like Asia, that have been, years ago, advanced in terms of the use of video, whether it's on their retail sites or their overall experience. The influencers that create this content become their own channels. So I'm not surprised to see that Walmart and other clients are doing that. I mean, video is very effective. It's becoming, it is affordable. When you think about the historical costs of content, they've come down, and right now you have that creator economy that they're making videos with the whole goal to drive product sales. And they're very effective, very authentic when done right. And it doesn't surprise me that if you're going to shop something online, that you're going to see a video, and that video is going to contain what we talked about earlier, the price. It's going to contain someone that is close to that product that can demonstrate those benefits in a very compelling way. And then thirdly, it's going to give you the opportunity to go in a very seamless way right into purchase, whether that's on the retailer side or the brand side. So that doesn't surprise me, given how consumers behave and how they want to understand brands or type of experiences, much more than static form.
Yeah, we can probably put this in the show notes. There's an article. It's it's a news article on corporatewalmart.com, and it's called Exploring the Potential of Virtual Commerce, and it's by a guy named Thomas Kong. He's VP and General Manager of Metaverse Commerce at store number 8, which is where they experiment with things like this. But yeah, it's called House Flip. And they partnered with a company called FunGI, like Fun Guy, which is a mobile game developer. And they partnered with Glidden paint colors that are sold at Walmart. At any rate, it generated more than 12 million impressions for the Glidden brand over the first 6 months. And that's a lot, for something new like that. It kind of surprised me.
Yeah, 12 million impressions. I'd like to know the numbers on the actual outcomes. I mean, 12 million impressions, that, you think of the size of people's followings and audience on a big regional brand. I'd like to know what the conversion was on the use of bringing all those things together: virtual, a product, an ability to kind of see what it's going to look like and experience that. I would be surprised if they don't have those numbers, maybe not share them.
I'm sure you're right. And this is a brand new thing. I mean, one thing about Walmart is they're always experimenting with things.
Yeah. And you look at brands today that are being built through this influencer creator economy. I'm not sure that's how I'd build my brand, borrowing off the equity of someone else. But you're finding huge results, categories or brands or promotional items are popping up. It used to take a year of planning are now coming up in a matter of months. And we're seeing a lot of the social commerce, I think QVC now, people showing up to view, let's say it's a common interest. It's really, it's an exciting, again, another exciting channel. How it's going to fit in the whole overall brand experience, TBD. But you're right, Matt. The retailers are not standing still. They're open and learning and experimenting, and the best ones are doing it, at a very regular clip.
Well, John, I mean, you've got so much experience, decades of experience in marketing, and you've really been in marketing at a time. I mean, marketing has gone through so many changes over the past 30 years. The basics of marketing never change. Of course, the concepts, price, promotion, place, etc. But how you actually achieve marketing success has way more roads than it used to, right? It used to be you had a few options of things you could do. Now there's just so many options. Yeah. It makes it more complicated on the one hand, but on the other hand, it opens up more opportunities. What's your take on that?
Man, I love talking about this topic. Little bit of perspective. Funny enough, I spent 20 years on the creative side of the business, the last 14 on the media side of the business. And that was at 2010 was about the time that, I jumped over to media because you saw all the dollars flowing there. And so from a dollar perspective, only in the last 10 to 12 years, back when I got in the media, 80% of the dollars went through traditional pipes, TV, print, radio, I don't know. There was a thing going into search, social, but only made up at most 10 to 20% of that chain. Fast forward to about 7 years ago, we hit that 50% inflection point in the race to digital. But now, if you look at the shift in marketing, to your point, it always is about the fundamentals. First of all, it's about audience and audience insights. It's about activation or engagement, and then it's really about measurement and optimization. So on any form of marketing, the question now becomes, how do we do that? and how do we do that and take advantage of all this technology? So from an audience standpoint, you now have at the individual level the ability to aggregate up audiences with incredible fidelity in terms of your understanding, not just demographics, behavior, purchase data, and it's all available through many, many different platforms, including retailers. So once you have that audience and insight, then you have to activate it. And it's like, wow, the proliferation of channels that you're able to do that in, just even if you just count the digital channels, then you throw on top of that what's happened with streaming, you throw on top of what we've talked about with retail media, you are now able to reach multiple audiences across many, many, many different channels. And then you're able to measure and optimize that, not to a reach and frequency number, but to business outcomes. And so marketing's role really has to be to continue to own that consumer, but it has to be a different paradigm. And I think, there's a great book out, I think it's called Quantum Marketing, written by the CMO, I think of MasterCard. You have to double check that, Matt. But it really lays out a fundamental shift in how we think about marketing. You think about what we were all taught about marketing. Well, that playbook was probably ripped up over the last 5 years and now being reinvented. You throw on top of that what's happening with AI and the ability to do things faster and better alongside humans, not automatically to replace them. But you're much more agile if you're smart. You're much more savvy about who your audience is. You're much more agile in the way that you engage with them. You're much more agile in the way that you measure and optimize. And for once, you can go back to your CEO and say, these dollars are effective. Here are the ones that are working in concert with each other. And, we can attribute this outcome with all the effort. So marketing needs to regain its voice. And I think you do that by embracing the technology and making sense of it in a very simple way. Because I think we all know in the last year, in the next year to come at least, the spending on technology is going to go, as a percent, is going to go down. It's going to be challenged. And so marketers really now have to harness in a smart way ways to engage with a real return on that investment. So I think it's never been a better time to jump into marketing, and it's always been an art and science. I think the science has a lot to do with the better art side of that now.
So for those listening, I went ahead and looked it up. I found it. I already ordered it, so good job selling that. It's Quantum Marketing, and the subtitle is Mastering the New Marketing Mindset of Tomorrow's Consumers, and it's by Raja Manar, and he, like you said, he was the chief marketing officer at MasterCard, and it was a Wall Street Journal bestseller. Sounds good. Sounds really good.
So I think it's one of those fundamental books that makes you rethink, where consumers are and trying to understand them, whether it's loyalty or trust, and then really be able to deliver. I think it also talks about where the role of marketing needs to go. You look at marketing titles now are going away. They're coming up with chief growth officers and everything else, chief revenue officer. So marketing needs to fight to show it's important, I think, as companies look to drive growth, profitable growth.
Well, John, this has been absolutely fabulous talking with you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. There's so much going on in marketing right now. Thank you for being willing to explore some of the data just off the cuff with me about some things that are going on in marketing. I appreciate that. And it's a pleasure to get to know you and really appreciate you.
Man, no, thank you. Great learning, and it's great to have these conversations. Things are changing so quickly, and your perspective and your interest in all these topics, I'm glad I was able to participate. So thank you, and have a great rest of the day, right?
If you're finding value in this podcast, We greatly appreciate your support by subscribing to our YouTube channel. Additionally, following us on Apple and Spotify and leaving up to a 5-star review would be immensely helpful. We welcome any feedback or questions related to the podcast, as well as suggestions for further topics and guests. You can leave your comments on our YouTube channel, and rest assured that I will read each and every one of them. Please also take a moment to check out our podcast sponsors, as they play a critical role in keeping this podcast running. For more information on specific topics, timestamps, or links to articles mentioned during the podcast, head over to mattwallerpodcast.com.